If what you've been doing as an ADHD parent isn't working, you, my friend, are in the right place. Today, I'm excited to introduce Rich DeCicco, an ADHD parent turned parent coach who has transformed his personal journey into a mission to support families like ours. Rich is the host of the Parenting Breakthrough podcast, where he shares daily bite-sized wisdom for parents breaking down common challenges for modern families. With firsthand experience as an ADHD parent, Rich understands the unique challenges and rewards that come with this journey. His coaching focuses on effective communication, behavior management, and fostering resilience in both parents and children. Rich's dedication to the ADHD community extends beyond individual coaching. He actively contributes to workshops and seminars, sharing his insights and strategies with the broader audience. His commitment to ongoing education ensures that he stays at the forefront of ADHD parenting techniques and resources. So, if you're ready to explore new strategies and gain valuable insights into ADHD parenting that even I needed to be reminded of, stay tuned. Rich DeCicco, welcome to Chaos and Caffeine.
Really happy to be here, Danielle. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So, our first question is very basic, and then things may go off the rails.
Okay.
If you are open to share, I would love to hear how you got your start in this field.
Happy to share that because it's the reason I'm in this field at all is my son, who is now 12, when he was 8, and keep in mind when that was, this was early 2020. So he had been having just severe behavior problems and we started to notice, okay, he's a little old for some of the things he's doing. Melting down over tiny stuff, getting super overwhelmed over things that seem innocuous, spiraling out of control when things don't go his way. And we had him evaluated at a place called Harbor Regional Center here in Los Angeles for autism. And his mom and I were like, oh, there's no way he's on the autism spectrum. Well, turns out he was on the autism spectrum. And they also indicated that he had ADHD, which is often comorbid with autism. That gave us a map to his brain that we didn't have before. Before that, he was just a problem child. Then we suddenly realized, oh, he's wired differently. And then this was January 2020 as we were starting to explore what therapies we could engage in and what kind of professional help we could get for him. COVID shut down the state of California and a lot of other places. So no one had figured out telehealth quite yet. And telehealth was certainly not the kind of thing he was going to engage with very well anyway, as evidenced by just how dysregulated he became by all the online school he had to do all of a sudden. And the school's figuring that out, building the plane while it's in the air, and most of the pieces are falling off. And so we had to figure this all out on our own. And we set out to learn as much as we could about autism and ADHD and how to parent effectively with a child on the autism spectrum who also has ADHD. And there was a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of missteps, but slowly we started doing a lot better than we had been because his dysregulation led to dysregulation in us more often than not. And him spiraling out of control would lead to me spiraling out of control. And so the first thing to learn was, oh, I need to fix how I react to things so I can be a better parent for him. And over the next couple of years, with a lot of practice, a lot of research, a lot of experimentation, a lot of talking to other parents in the same situation, I started to get a really clear picture of how to be the best possible parent for him. And about a year ago, I decided that while my approach wasn't something I invented, it was cobbled together from a lot of different places and rooted in just a style that worked for me. And I set out to start to share that with other parents, tell other parents my experience. And some parents started asking me for personal help. Hey, can I hop on a Zoom with you and talk through this issue I'm dealing with? Oh, what would your approach be to video games? What's your approach to screen time? What's your approach to making meal times easier? And I found that I had help to offer, real help to offer. And so if you're out there and you're a parent and you're not sure if you can help another parent, I would urge you to realize that you have some unique knowledge to share, and you should put yourself in situations where you can help other families. And
Absolutely.
that's become my mission.
We're on very similar career paths. However,
Mm,
our path into coaching is probably a little different. I
mm,
actually fell into positive parenting. I was trying to become a better parent before we even had the diagnosis. And
mm.
lucky for me, positive parenting is the only way to parent children with ADHD, so it all worked out.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
for very selfish reasons, how do you handle video game and screen time?
Sure. So I I know a lot of families that are zero screen time ever. And I also know a lot of other families that just really don't have the luxury of that. And my family is one of the latter. We don't have the luxury of just zero screen time ever. And what I discovered in researching the perspectives on this for kids who are neurodivergent is that it's often a way for them to soothe, and it's often a way for them to decompress. And so removing it from the picture completely, one, it's not realistic for most families because we do need to do the dishes and we do need to take care of things. And sometimes putting a puzzle or a book in front of a kid who just needs to unwind for a while is not going to work. So, what I set out to do for my kid, and what I recommend for other families, especially families with ADHD kids, is to make screen time a very intentional thing and to make it a thing where it's not mindless, just empty time, but it's time that they're engaging with something that's going to help them socially, or it's going to help them develop a new skill. So for my son, it's very much about baseball. He loves baseball, and it's all he thinks about. It's the typical ADHD obsessive kind of, once you're into something, you're just super duper into it. And so when he's going, when he's going on YouTube, I really say, I say to him, let's make this 30 minutes about learning a new skill for baseball. Go look up go look up a video on stances, just how different baseball players stand, and he'll dig into that for 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be, you know, like unboxing, like toy unboxing videos and stuff like that. And it can be a thing that actually enriches your child. It doesn't have to be just kind of mindless, fill the time. here's a screen so I can go get some work done kind of thing. The other thing I recommend is to have some time where you are doing something together with the screen so that you're using it for some connection,
Yes.
for some bonding, you know, especially wanting to, you know, if there's something they're super interested in, you know, it just so happens because he's into baseball, I've gotten into baseball, and all these old skills that I had from when I was his age are starting to come back to life because oh, I just dropped my chair. Oh, it doesn't matter. We're audio only.
Yeah.
If this were a video podcast, you would have seen me drop one foot. Uh, um, so yeah, using it as a thing that we can connect over. And that could be something as simple as, hey, let's watch an episode of The Simpsons. You know, it doesn't have to be complicated, but just coming back to that idea of let's make screen time an intentional thing. And then the last kind of pillar of screen time that I think of is, well, it comes under a larger umbrella of scheduling the day. So starting every day with a clear idea of what the day is going to look like. And that doesn't mean that stuff's not going to come up. It doesn't mean that if the schedule isn't followed to the letter, like we're going to have a huge problem. It just means we set out to plan our day a little bit, which makes for fewer surprises, better emotional regulation, easier time with transitions. And when we're exiting something like screen time and headed into something different, having some sort of bridge activity in there.
Mm.
So we're not going to go straight from screen time to, okay, we got to put our shoes on, brush our teeth, and get out the door for school. Some sort of bridge where it's, okay, screen time is ending at 8:25. And for 5 minutes in there, we're going to sit quietly together and talk, or we're going to share a snack. Something that continues to be soothing and regulating for them, but also helps them make that transition from being immersed in a screen, because we're all immersed in our screens. It's, you know, I have to be told to snap out of it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, hey, get off your phone. By him. So, you know, having a schedule and building in those bridge activities between screen time and the next thing is really key for us as well.
I love that. Listeners cannot see me, but I am aggressively nodding to multiple things in there. The core of what I teach is the routine, because
Mm,
that is, that gives them, the heads up that this is happening, and we have a lot less transition meltdown. So I totally agree with that. I
yeah.
am going to personally use the mid transition from screen time to brushing teeth and see how that goes. I I had a wild conversation. My son was in first grade a few years ago, and I said, "Hey, buddy, we are having a hard time from you going from your tablet to homework. What could
Yeah.
mom do to make that easier?" And he was like, "Mom, if you set a 5 minute timer and I hear the timer, I promise to go to homework with no
Mm,
issues." And I was like,
nice.
"Man, he's such a tiny, wise little guy, who I just happened to get credit for raising." But I was like, that is brilliant. So for 3 or 4 years, we have used that
Yeah. No,
response.
that's awesome.
But yeah, I'm
How
going
old
to
is he? How old's your
currently
kid?
we are 9. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, he's very wise. I am going to add in maybe a little transition break in there from kids YouTube to whatever I'm
Yeah.
demanding.
Awesome.
So I
Great.
know you said you've only been parent coaching for a year now. What
Yeah.
is the most outrageous thing you have come across so far? And that could definitely be in your own life for ADHD families.
Most outrageous thing. There was a kid who was obsessed with a certain car in a certain parking garage. And, and this was a pretty young kid, this is a 4-year-old kid. whenever, and the parking garage was attached to a grocery store that the family always went to. And whenever they would, and this particular car was always parked in this one spot. It was a bright red Corvette.
Mm.
And whenever they'd walk past the car, the kid would just want to look at and be near and touch the car and wouldn't want to leave, and would actually get super overwhelmed and like melt down over it because it was just such an intense flood of emotions for him.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so what I helped the family do is first regulate themselves around this because they were becoming super dysregulated at his dysregulation. And there's a whole process I bring people through where we try and identify and label emotions and triggers for the parent so that they can work through those triggers and emotions and depolarize them. And for them, it was an expectation of an easy trip to and from the grocery store. Um, and so the first key for them in figuring this out was how do we stay calm when he's spiraling out of control? After we did that and worked through that process, then we started working on kind of depolarizing the car for the kid. And that came with more exposure to make it less novel. And not in person, but pictures, and also taking him to places where there were lots of special cars to make it less, just less of an unexpected novel thing. And it just so happens there's a really great car museum in the town that they lived in, and they took him to the car museum, and it was a really grounding experience for the kid. And yeah, that was when they first talked to me about this issue. I said, you're going to need to give me a minute because I need to think about how to approach that. That's the one that springs to mind.
My dad and that child would get along. Looking for some new toys and tools that your ADHD kiddos will love? Play Therapy Supply has you covered with a great selection of toys, games, and fidgets that can be used by ADHD children, their parents, caregivers, and professionals alike. From fidget toys that help children calm down, de-stress, and focus, to social emotional learning resources to help kids understand their feelings and emotions, to games and activities designed to improve emotional regulation. Play Therapy Supply has it all. For thousands of items and fast and free shipping, visit playtherapysupply.com today. Perfectly. He's definitely also into old cars.
I love old cars. I'm not even a car guy, but show me something from 1975 and earlier, and I will stare at it.
Yeah. That story actually leads perfectly into my next question. So coaching ADHD families can feel like herding caffeinated squirrels. So what is your secret to staying calm when the family's energy is spiraling out of control?
So, do you mean my family or a family
It could
that
be
I'm,
your family,
yeah,
definitely, but it could also be if you're in a coaching session and things go off the rails, how do you maintain your own calm?
yeah. So in the vast majority of my coaching situations, I'm really just working with the parent. And because to me, the parent's attitude uh, and their emotional position and where they are emotionally is is going to make 90% of the difference in the home. And I had to learn this myself because I was highly prone to getting overwhelmed when my kid was overwhelmed. And I discovered, I don't know about you, but I discovered that I definitely, and I have a formal diagnosis, I'm an ADHD person.
Yeah.
And I definitely have autistic traits too.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize for the longest time, oh, when I'm in a social situation for 3 hours and I come out of that situation, lights are too much and sounds I'm not expecting to hear are too much, and being touched is too much. So the first big secret was getting to know myself better and getting a better understanding of who I was and how my brain worked. And I actually will narrate out loud if I'm having a time of overwhelm or dysregulation. I will narrate it to my son. And this models for him how I regulate myself. It also models for him that I'm going through things that are very similar to what he goes through. And I'm modeling for him that I can share with people when I'm feeling just like everything's too much.
Yeah.
And so I will say to him sometimes, I'm going to step out of the room for 30 seconds because I just need to reset and go breathe.
Yeah.
And this is not necessarily in a situation where he is experiencing any dysregulation himself, but I'm just telling him, hey, I'm going through something right now. Just give me a minute. So when he is having a time of dysregulation, my biggest secret is to not necessarily act immediately and don't feel like I have to jump in and fix, because that was the instinct earlier, and I'm sure it's the instinct of a lot of parents.
Yeah.
Regardless of diagnosis, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Make it stop, fix it, fix it, fix it. And I can give it a second. This, and if it's in a public place, this has to do with like letting go of the guilt and the expectation and the feeling of judgment. Don't, don't worry about those people. They might be judging you right now, but they won't be thinking about you in 10 minutes.
Agreed. Yeah.
So let's just say my son is having some sort of spiral and he's overloaded, dysregulated. I'm gonna first look at myself. What am I feeling right now? If there's something that needs to be addressed there, I wanna work that real quick. There's a breathing technique. Have you ever heard of Dr. Andrew Weil?
I have not.
Yeah, he's been around since the 80s, and he's had a lot of books on like natural health and like eating for health and food as medicine, that kind of stuff. But he's a doctor who's worked with a lot of people in order to help them address anxiety and depression by addressing their eating. But he also has this breathing technique that he teaches called the 4-7-8. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and breathe out for 8. And the out breath is really aggressive, like.
Yeah.
And I use this effectively. I mean, every time I do it, it's like magic. And I'm not 100% certain of the mechanism that's at play here, but I think it has to do with, one, taking your attention out of the external and out of your head and getting into your body. I also think it hyperoxygenates your blood, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a situation where I need to get a hold of myself, I need to get a hold of an anxious feeling, I will do that 4-7-8 breath. Two or three of them is plenty, and then dive in to uh, helping my son get past this dysregulation moment. And it's really just about being present, being there, and not again, we can't dictate their emotions and we can't change their emotions, but what we can do is just be a rock for them, just be there for them.
Yes.
And that comes with saying, I'm here for you. I see you. This is really tough for you. Let's sit together. There are times where, and I have mixed feelings about recommending this, but there are times where my son just needs to be alone for 2 minutes
Yeah.
and then it passes. And sometimes I feel that he will tell me he wants to be alone when he really doesn't. So I have to kind of use my judgment in the moment. Does he really want to be by himself right now, or does he need me by his side?
Yeah.
And again, this is parenting is a constant trial and error, constant experiment,
Yeah. For
constant
sure.
progression. But I will say, do you just need to be alone for a minute? I understand if that's the case. If you want me here, I'll be here. If you want to just sit on your own for 2 minutes, I will go in the other room. And I mean, so many times, because one of the biggest mistakes we would always make is like, hey, what do you need? What can we do? How can we fix this? And that would just make it worse, right?
Yeah.
The thing that would especially make it worse is trying to help him rationalize the feeling or justify the feeling. Like, oh, I mean, you dropped your banana. It's okay. We have another one.
Mm.
Um, I mean, a weird example, but that would sometimes just make it worse. You're not fixing it by dismissing their emotion. And what you're telling them is that when they get out of control, it's inconvenient for you.
Yeah.
And we really don't want to send that message.
Yeah. Along those lines, years ago, I tried to implement a time in instead of a time out where we
Yeah,
sit and co regulate together.
yeah,
That is not his preference. He told me very upfront that he does not like that. He needs his time.
yeah,
So I respect that. Another
yeah.
thing that you touched on in there is I love that my son has the space to express himself. You were
Mm,
talking about modeling, you know, self regulating and emotional control. We have spoken many times this year, well, in 2024, about I love that you are expressing yourself,
mm,
but we need to find a more respectful way to do so. I love
mm.
that you can tell me, that you're frustrated or, I love that. I really do. I love that I'm your safe space.
Yeah,
However, there are some things we can work on in there. So that's our goal
yeah.
for 2025.
Yeah, and being their safe space is a mixed bag because they will lay into you and have zero filter with you. And then other people will say, "Oh, your son is so well mannered.
Yeah.
He's got such a little gentleman." And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah, for you
Yeah.
maybe."
Yeah. My child's pediatrician actually has told me many times that my son's independent nature, his strong will, is going to serve him so well later in life. And I should be
Mm.
grateful that I am the practicing for that, later in life. And I was like, that does not make me feel any better. I know you're trying to make me feel better, but that does not do anything for me.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So, what is moving on? I'm trying to keep it in the same field. My ADHD will take us all over if I let it.
Okay.
What is one piece of ADHD wisdom that you swear by that would make traditional parenting books clutch their pearls?
Oh, oh, interesting.
And it may be that you do not disregard screen time. I've already caught on to that, but that doesn't have to be it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I do. I think I really unpacked that pretty thoroughly. Um, there's, I didn't invent this. I didn't come up with it, but I also don't remember where I heard it. Um, but that medication, if you're taking that route, uh, you should endeavor to have that not be a permanent thing.
Hmm.
And that what the medication does is it puts the brain in a place where it can be more plastic and learn new ways of doing things so that we can then titrate off the medication.
Yes.
Um, and I mean, our son is on Focalin, um, but what we build into his day are things that are attention building because and it has to be around things that are not necessarily his preference.
Hmm.
Because if as an ADHD person, if there's a preferred activity, if there's something you really want to do, you got no problem tackling that and staying on it for 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
um, but if it's a non-preferred activity, um, that just feels like drudgery, well, then we are we're going to have a lot of trouble approaching that.
Yeah.
And I feel that this is something that works because I've done it with myself. I was on medication for a while and set out to be very deliberate um, about teaching my brain to approach things I didn't want to do and build systems for myself that would allow me to do them and make them less of a heavy lift for me,
Yeah.
and was able to get to a place where I didn't need to be on the medicine anymore. And especially for like a 46-year-old man, it's not the best thing to be on a stimulant. It's not great for blood pressure. It's there's some negatives,
Yeah.
um, health wise, um, in addition to the proclivity for more addictive and kind of um, I don't want to say like thrill-seeking behaviors that come that are attached to these potentially attached to these medicines.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, so this is not medical advice.
Right.
Um, and would that make a typical parenting book clutch its pearls? I don't know, but I think for a lot of people, they feel like, oh, once we're on this medicine, we're stuck on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two favorite ADHD experts that I watch on YouTube.
Mhm.
One is Russell Barkley, and the other that I listen to is always saying how he hates that Russell Barkley is so medication focused. And I was like,
Mm.
so I'm getting the best of both worlds fed into me there.
But in the end, you have to do what's right, what's best for the individual, and what's
Yeah.
best for the kid. Like on balance, what's going to be the best path. You could find that you do all the exercises in the world and all the attention building activities in the world, and you come off the meds and things are right back where they were. And that's not what we want. Like,
Yeah.
but it's also becoming a really difficult thing to get your hands on these stimulant based medicines now.
I have heard that.
Um, yeah, and there's, the we're actually in a situation right now where the one that we're on, we got about 45 of them left, and we're not really certain where the next batch is coming from. um, and once you find one that works, you really don't want to have to try another one.
Yeah.
because we tried 4 before we
No.
landed on this one.
Mm,
Adderall was a nightmare. Like day 1, we were like, oh my God, this is not going to work. Because he was having panic attacks.
yeah.
Like he was sitting on the stairs,
Mm,
like breathing like he had completely lost control of everything.
yeah.
Um, and so I don't know, we're kind of looking ahead at these next 45 days of like, how do we give ourselves a soft landing
Yeah.
if we can't find the next bottle?
Mm. Fingers crossed for you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
I know that is a big trial and error thing. Initially, I started coaching parents on the first steps after diagnosis, creating the routine, what questions to ask the pediatrician, what outside support to find.
Mhm.
And medication is towards the end of that roadmap. And over the last year or so, I found that my business has really transformed into what can we try before that leap. It's such a
Mm.
anxiety riddled path, and I get it, no judgment. I'm also not anti-medication by any means, but that has seemed to be the common theme for the last year or so of my coaching clients. They are, what can we try first? And
Yeah,
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 it's good advice.
it's hard to explain to them that this isn't what you try first. This is what you try no matter what path you're on, but they'll get there.
Yeah, yeah.
Before I give you space to talk about your coaching, I would like to ask you one last question. What is one ADHD parenting hack that gets immediate results but no one is talking about?
Hmm. That's a that's an interesting Venn diagram. No one talking about it. 'Cause like I said, I don't feel like I invented much of anything here. I put things together in a certain order that I've seen work really well.
Yeah.
Um, but to that end, I don't think that people work hard enough as parents to address their reactions to things
Mm,
before they start working on the kid. And I've seen situations in my coaching where just addressing the parents' triggers was enough,
yes.
and it actually created changes in the kid.
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be mine. What are you fearful of? What are you clinging to as an expectation?
Mm,
Right? So many parents, a really common theme in my coaching is parents who have a fear of the future,
mhm.
right? They're looking at what they expected parenthood to be like, and then they're comparing it to what it is for them right
Yes.
now. And there's a grief and a mourning that's happening. It's as if they're mourning a future that they thought they were going to have that they now know will not exist.
Yes.
And addressing that fear of the future comes with resetting our expectations and fully processing the grief of that future we were expecting to have,
Yes. You
right?
stole my answer 100%. I want to allow space for that grieving because I do think that's important. But I think a lot of it is letting go of the child that we thought we were going to have and dealing with the one, right in front of us. And that it's challenging. It is challenging,
Yeah.
but it's really our inner work. I feel like the universe, God, source, whatever you would like to call it, sent me
Yeah.
the child that I needed to work on myself. So,
Mm.
yeah, I asked for patience and here I am.
No, I no, I will echo how you close that last statement by saying I'm a better person because of the son that I got.
Absolutely.
My daughter is the easiest kid to parent in the world. She's 14. She has none of the like typical teenage craziness. She's just kind and sweet and understanding and thoughtful. And then my son comes along and he's a hurricane.
Yeah.
And and having him made me have to really engage on a path of self-development
Yes.
that I would not have otherwise engaged in.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Mm.
Yeah. You were the typical, you guys had a super easy one, so let's try again. And
Yeah.
we had the second kid first, and we were like, we cannot risk it. We should stop right now.
Ah.
So, Rich, I want you to tell the listeners about your amazing website and how they can get in touch with you for possibly one on one coaching.
Yeah, if you go to theparentingbreakthrough.com, the first thing you'll see is an opportunity to download everything I've created to date, which is the Parenting Breakthrough Guide. It's a 50-page guide that essentially mirrors my coaching process, and you can work through it on your own. I really wanted to set out to say, if you don't have the means to work with a professional coach, I want you to be able to at least attempt to do this on your own. And maybe you can go through it by yourself. And then later on, if you have the means, we can work on it. We can go through it together again. And, it's just like people in 12-step, they don't just go through the 12 steps once. They do it over and over and over again throughout their sobriety
Yeah.
because you get something new out of it every time. So you can, but I digress. You can go, you can grab the Parenting Breakthrough Guide in a PDF form. There's the audio book. There's a 7-day quick start video series that, I'm trying to shape this for all different kinds of learners, and however you like to consume ideas. I tried to put something out there for you. And you can also, from the website, access my podcast. The podcast is kind of bite-sized stuff, daily-ish.
I love
They're
that.
usually under 10 minutes, and I just take one topic and unpack it for 5 to 10 minutes. And then you can also book a time to hop on my calendar, and we'll talk for 45 minutes and see if I'm a good fit for you and you're a good fit for me, and go from there.
Perfect. And what was the name of the podcast?
The Parenting Breakthrough Podcast.
Perfect. And we will link all of that in the description
Awesome.
as well.
Thank you.
Rich, thank you so much. I always enjoy speaking to parents on the same path, and I always learn something new, and this was amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Chaos and Caffeine. Just a quick host note, you guys know that recently LA was wrecked due to wildfires. And as you heard, that is where Rich lives. So any way that you could support him, I would greatly appreciate it. All links will be in the description. Until next time, guys. Bye.